So I think I know everyone here, except Trevor. Who are you with?
I'm Claire Gillespie, the partner in crime for the Monomyth curriculum situation.
Awesome, Claire. Thanks for joining us. Let's just do a quick round of saying hi. Tell me your name. Tell me what your day gig is, and tell me if you wrote a famous blog, what would be the title, and kind of what would the blog be all about. So I'll start off. I'm Adam Hansen. By day, I'm facilitator and VP of innovation and partner at Ideas to Go. We're an innovation consultancy. I'm in our Morristown, New Jersey office and live out in the wilds here in beautiful, I don't know if you can see that, but in beautiful Northwest New Jersey. If I had a famous blog in this imaginative world, it would be the soulless corporate hack's guide to playing in a cover band, because that's I've been doing that quite a bit in the last 17. No, more than that, really. Like really, most of my career, I've been in one cover band or another. And this is actually the longest I've gone now without playing, and I'm starting to get really antsy and weird. So I gotta find another gig quick. So that's my story. Let's go. I'm gonna. I don't know if we all see the same layout below, but I'm gonna go to my on my screen just to the left of me. I'm gonna go to Willie. Your name, your day gig, and if you had a famous blog, what would it be all about?
My name is William Santilli. My day gig is public school teacher at Kalamazoo Public Schools in Michigan.
Which grades? Which grade?
Well, I've been doing African American Lit and 9th grade. So in African American Lit, it's 9 through 12, and in 9th grade, obviously self-explanatory.
Sweet.
As far as a famous vlog, I don't know that I would have one. If at this point,
imagine a world, Willie, where that were true.
Yeah, it would be an interesting one. I think it would be probably more like a journal vlog of the experiences that I tend to go through. For instance, like 2 days ago, I was at a powwow in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah, it's I tend to find circumstances and situations where I don't know that people typically don't. It was really cool though. I don't know.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't know about a vlog. It would probably just be a journal type thing.
This sounds good. All right. Thank you so much, Willie. Let's go now to Trevor and Claire.
All right. Trevor Elio. I teach at Colgan High School. It's in the DC sprawl. I'm in Prince William County. I teach English 10th and 12th grades. If I had a famous blog, it would be called Schnapsidee, which is German for a Schnapps idea, which is basically just a crazy harebrained scheme that is potentially the product of Schnapps, potentially the product of this. Having a crazy idea, because I feel like that's kind of what drives me and what excites me is just finding harebrained schemes and seeing if they can come to fruition, and that's why I'm here today, I think.
That's perfect. There is the idea that if when you're really trying to push for innovation, if an idea up front doesn't have a certain level of weirdness or craziness to it, there's not much hope for it. So we really need to do that, not just because that's fun and that's wacky and that's everything, but because it's actually effective. And it really helps us get to a much better place. So right on. Schnapsidee?
Schnapsidee.
Schnapsidee,
I think.
Okay, Schnapsidee.
I am not a native or secondary German language speaker, so I could be butchering that. So apologies to any German people listening.
When we do this kind of work, we encourage bad foreign language usage and bad art. So
excellent. Excellent. I got some stick figures ready to go.
It's fantastic. All right.
I also wouldn't worry about offending the Germans. They're super low key, chill.
That's right.
They're sensitive right now, though, after their World Cup result.
Right. Also,
yeah,
I taught in Baltimore County, which is just a couple counties north of you. I was at Woodlawn High School years ago.
What? Adnan Syed Woodlawn High School?
In Baltimore County.
From Serial?
Is that where Adnan was?
Adnan. I'm not familiar with the term Adnan. What is
the Serial podcast?
Oh, it very well could be. I don't follow.
Well, yeah, because Leakin Park is the one that's really close to it. Yeah, because I'm from Maryland originally.
Yeah,
so
right.
I'll have that as a magical segue into my introduction. My name is Claire Gillespie. I also teach at Colgan High School, 10th grade pre-AP, and then 12th grade AP Literature. If I had a blog, it would be titled, I don't know, probably something ridiculous because of the drama background that I have. I've attempted to do a lot of blogs in the past. They haven't worked out, but I mean, I had the MySpace, I had the Zanga, I had the whole 9 yards. So it would be a combo platter journal and then like creative outlet for drama and the crafty, because I'm kind of a craft goddess, self-professed Pinterest whiz. So and that would be
a series of unfortunate blogs.
A series of unfortunate blogs. That's it. Done.
That's like
this is why this is the dream team.
That's awesome. Very good, Claire. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Mr. Motz.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Hunter Motz. My day job is tutoring and just making that dollar by elevating the children's aspirations, dreams, and skill levels. It doesn't really translate well to rap. The tutor rap is not really good. If I was the author of a famous blog, I think it would be called Let's Finger Dykes Together.
Oh, yeah, it's after 3 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, and in general, because that is my whole thing is like I see shit that doesn't work, and I'm like, does nobody else see this? Like, this doesn't seem to be working. Can we fix it, please, together? Yeah.
And the tie to the heritage is fantastic.
Yeah. So
right on. Okay, so we're going adult, folks. Mr. Martin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Martin, and I tutor. That's how I pay the bills. That's how I pay a mortgage on the South Shore of Long Island is by being a one-on-one educational therapist. I always contract into private schools, work in a religious community almost exclusively, both my private clients and my schools. And if I had a blog, I guess it would be called Naked OG. The Emperor Has No Clothes. And it would probably just be a rambling diatribe of me railing against Orton Gillingham and reading intervention permutations that have come from it.
That's great. Very cool. Well, hey, it looks like we have a great crew. Here's what I'd like to do. I want to get us going. And for those of you not familiar with the creative problem solving model, I'll just give you a quick, I'm guessing many of you have been exposed to this, but just to be safe, the idea is when you're doing an ideation session, when you're doing this kind of work, if you first look at what would be some big opportunity areas to go after, instead of going straight into ideation, you usually end up doing better. And that way you also make sure that the ideas you do come up with are both relevant and unique, and that you're really going in the areas where there's the most interest. So I'm going to give you a few ground rules. And then what I'd like to do, I'm going to encourage us to use the chat feature here to enter ideas, and I'll put in a heading first, and then you can enter all the ideas, and that way we can get the transcript from the chat record, and we can, have some navigational aids built into it. So here are a few, I say ground rules, but we're not strict on rules. We call them guidelines, but whatever, ground rules. So number one, can you read that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Number one, headline. If you all have notepads handy, that would be great. Or just kind of before you share your idea verbally, kind of work it through. I benefit from this tremendously. I'm a raging extrovert. And so I often don't know what I think until words start coming out of my mouth. And while that can be helpful, sometimes it's not always the best use of airtime in a group process. So if you can kind of start forming your idea, you know how ideas happen. They first come, they're kind of gauzy, kind of amorphous. You have to kind of think them through a little first. If you do more of that thinking through on paper or in the chat window before you share it verbally, then that will be good. And it will increase our muscle to fat ratio on the ideas that are being shared. So rule number one, headline as much as possible. We don't need to know the background so much for the idea as just really the idea itself. Number two is please avoid the yes, but. And we have a process where we say, look, you have two other approaches you can take. When you hear an idea, some of these ideas, we're hoping many of these ideas are going to be real stretch ideas for the sake of, provocative, intent. So focus on what is working in the idea. Like, what are you really for in the idea? Understand that first and see if you can build ideas off that fragment of it. But then the other side isn't what you're against, but then like what you'd wish for. The idea isn't perfect yet, but when you hear an idea that's not quite there, it can be really useful because it can drive to some specific areas for improvement instead of just kind of leaving you with a vague unease about it. So be really resourceful. We're not going to be overly concerned right now about feasibility and implementation. We can get to that a little bit later. But the more you can use ideas early on as vehicles to help you get to yet better places than as end destinations necessarily in and of themselves right now, the better off we're going to be. And we really do want to get some ideas going that are provocative. And then again, if they don't sound a little crazy, there's not a sufficient degree of newness, uniqueness to them. And it's going to be probably a little too much same old, same old. Okay, so rule number three, this often comes up. If you have questions, instead of asking the person who gave the idea, your question is probably some kind of supposition. So just turn it into another idea. Like instead of saying, hey, could that be purple? Color probably won't come up here, but who knows? Just say, hey, now that idea is purple. Okay, we're just trying to come up with more ideas. We're not trying to necessarily settle, the perfect iteration of every idea that comes out right now. Two more, just quickly, kind of tied to that. Don't be too literal. What can you do with what you're hearing? How can you use that? What does that make you think of? What kind of space does that crack open for you when you play with it some? And that's what this is all about. And the spirit of play is going to be very helpful. There's some really compelling research that's going to be coming out soon showing that play is the single best activator of the default mode network in our brain, which is what we want to get going. We're going to suppress through play and through our work here the prefrontal cortex. We're not going to do a whole lot of judging right now. We're going to see where things can go. So with that as well, the last rule, of course, is have some fun. If we're not having fun doing this kind of work, then we probably need to be, something severe needs to be done with us. So appreciate your time. What I'd like, does anybody have any questions? Are we good so far? All right. What I'd like to do is we're gonna hunt now for some big opportunity areas. I guess I want to open it up to you. I'm gonna ask two questions. Number one, what is the single greatest pressing need that a group like this might be able to take on and do something about it? So what's the single in education? So what's the single greatest pressing need in education that this group might be able to take on and do something about it? I'll give you some time to collect your thoughts on this. I probably should have sent out a note before, but this should be something that's fairly close to your heart and should be, you know, fairly easy to come up with. There are other groups, agencies, bodies, organizations that, you know, have different charters and maybe they can take on some of this stuff. But for right now, thinking of this group and what we could get working on, what would be the single greatest need that we could spend some time on? If you have more than one answer, that's fine, but do some prioritizing. I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to give you a little time to collect your thoughts.
Adam, do you want us to type this in the private chat or in the public chat on the YouTube channel?
Oh, snap. I forgot that we had YouTube going on. What do you wish the answer were?
I wish that we would type in the public chat so that it becomes part of the transcript record.
Do we have the, I didn't see the link to the YouTube.
Here, I can, I think, put it in here in the private chat so that everybody can see it.
Okay.
So there it is.
Okay.
And now it's purple.
I like it. Let me see how I get to that. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and put it right into the that link then, if you would. I'm going to try to get this figured out.
Also, Guy Ninneman says, Adam looks like a cross between George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, which I think means that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg's love child is Andrew Meintzer.
I absolutely love that. What I usually get, Hunter, you know, where am I? Is I look like Michael Moore.
Michael Moore on his best fucking hair day.
Okay. I need to open up. I'm lost.
What are you lost on?
I can't. I open up YouTube now. I can't find Google Hangouts.
It's probably another tab, or
if you go to YouTube and just search for the Mixed Mental Arts channel, then you'll find this chat is there. Mixed Mental Arts Chats /educators, and it's it'll be live, and then you can see the chat.
Cool. So I think Claire and I are good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right. I'm going to have to figure out the YouTube thing in just a second. Hunter, can you paste that link again? I'm so sorry.
Yep.
I got the the delay going, and then it started this recursive loop. I started hearing us all say the same thing about 4 times. It was really fun.
I paused the
Vortex.
Yeah, I paused the video and I'm just using the chat function.
On YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know you could do that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go pin that down. Have you started to enter your ideas into that? But we can also share them out verbally. So let me go to Claire. What is one thing that you think this group that can take on? It's one of the single biggest pressing needs in education, and you would love to spend some time on it.
Reattaching the human experience back into the world of education, insofar as making bringing, so like particularly from the perspective of an English teacher, oftentimes we get the question of how is this relevant to me, and the issue is that it's obscenely relevant to every student. However, I think that one of the things that we can do as this group is to repackage that to be able to sell it in a better, more applicable way to the students that hits them on their level and gives them the ability to transcend through what we use already in the classroom.
Claire, it's clear that you haven't really thought about this too much, and so that is fantastic. And that's really kind of the degree of energy and heart and passion and drive and everything that I'm really happy to hear. So did you enter that in the YouTube chat? Can you do that?
I'm doing that in this moment.
Okay.
But I got distracted by Hunter saying make education relevant again, and then getting the hashtags all ready to go on the.
That's the answer, is the hashtags.
So we're good.
All right. We're all multitasking a little. And I've had to point out to my female colleagues sometime that men as well as some females. Here we go. Trevor, what is one big thing that we could work on?
So I'm obviously coming from the same background as Claire, looking at things from a more humanity-centric perspective. But I feel like a lot of the issues that when you talk to teachers about problems they're experiencing, they're always systemic. There are, there's problem from Betsy DeVos is our Secretary of Education, not to dip into the political realm, but when you look up the hierarchy of leadership in terms of how education is structured, I feel like there's just a feeling that teachers are, besides having some control over their own classroom, they're kind of powerless to have a voice in a broader context.
Yeah.
And I think that in the period of disruption and technology that we live in, I think that we have the tools at our fingertips to have like a grassroots kind of movement from teachers that can obviously be empowered by the leadership. But I guess just giving teachers a feeling of autonomy and control. And this is just kind of my ploy to seize the means of curriculum and some teacher revolt uprising, and just kind of giving us a voice again in what we're teaching and how we're teaching it.
I love the seize the means of curriculum. It's so Saul Alinsky. I love that. And I think everyone should figure out what the kind of the evil conspiracy is that they want to devote their energies to. And I think it's helpful to tee it up in such revolutionary terms. All right, let's go to Mr. Santilli. What's the one big thing we could spend some time on?
Well, I would say in the vein of mixed mental arts, I would say just a tool set or I guess, for lack of a better word, debate. I've always seen mixed mental arts as sort of a debate club. And I think that tests in general and homework in general, curriculum in general, kids always say, like, where's my work, or I got to do my homework. And I think really what education should be doing well is what technology cannot do well. And that's the human interaction, that's thinking on your feet, that's the interpersonal communication that humans do. That's one of the biggest. I think the priority is in our brains set to those types of communication assets, whether it be body language, everything else. So if I was to say what this group could actually accomplish and do, it would to be give not necessarily curriculum, but guides to by which to have group-led conversations, and I really like the idea of scenes. Was it Seeds the Curriculum or Seeds the Means of Curriculum?
Yeah.
But really, the pinnacle of education, in my point of view, is when the students seizes the means of their education. They have to make it real, and they have to make it real to them, and they have to make it. We have to make it edutainment, and then they have to pick it up and go. We have to be we have to be more attractive. We have to be more. We have to be more attractive. We have to be more entertaining than their cell phones.
So I'm hearing two things, I think, and see if I'm distilling these reasonably well, William. One is kind of, I just call it the human communication toolkit.
Sure.
Does that work for one? And then the other one, which I really love, is what you started going into here, is, ways of passing the mic as a metaphor to the students.
Right. They need to be owners of their education. That is,
I love it.
We have to let go of the control, and it's the most. I mean, teaching for 12 years, it's the most difficult thing that I've ever learned to do. But there are about 3 assignments, and it takes me funneling the curriculum into this self-ownership. But by the end of the semester, trimester, or whatever, they are choosing the ways by which they are assessed. They are choosing. Okay, so I love it. So I'll leave it at that.
We're trying to get some areas, see if there's any convergence here, and then we're going to pick. We're going to see if we can knock out a few of these. So let me go on to the illustrious Mr. Martin. What's one that we could take on, Carl?
Well, I typed in the chat. What did I actually chat? I should own whatever I wrote there. Drive a narrative about education being process-based, reveal and communicate learning processes whereby education is dynamic and self-directive. It feels like to me the real action that would come from a group like this would be trying to frame the straight A conspiracy text into a more flexible and available toolkit curriculum model for teachers to actually try to use. Taking the time to develop theoretical lessons that could flesh out the ideas there that would work in a small group delivery model would be the one thing that I could see being substantive that a group like this could actually, go and do.
I love it. I'm a target area starting to come together for me. We'll discuss it in just a little bit. Hunter. Is that good, Carl? That good for right now? All right. Mr. Motz.
A free global public education system for the 21st century.
Right on.
I think especially when you read history, I grew up in England and it's amazing. Like, I know so much about the Tudors. And, just all the most British shit. And even just reading accounts of World War II are fascinating, because in the British account of World War II, one plucky little island had the strength to stand up against the Nazis. In the American account of World War II, it's American ingenuity and might beat the Nazis. And in the Soviet and the Russian account, it's only we had the tenacity and resolve to endure Stalingrad and beat the Nazis. Somehow everybody thinks the war was won single-handedly with their side. And I just think that that's really, really unhealthy for, humans who are growing up in such a global age. And there have been so many great books that have started to do that process, like Guns, Germs, and Steel, Sapiens, and that have started to carve out what is the education history for a tribe called human. And I think that's not something, a space that national governments are going to step into. And the sort of bottom-up grassroots teachers revolution that we're talking about can get together and create that while making it relevant and connected to actually getting the adaptive skills you need to survive in the 21st century.
Right on. Very good. I'm hearing some really great territory to cover here. I did hear some convergence on this idea of tools, and I'm wondering if that could be a place that we could go to first. Let me do this first, just so we have this set up, and shame on me for not doing it right up front. How much time does everyone have? When do folks turn into a pumpkin?
I leased my pumpkin for a few days, so I'm good.
Oh, you go. Okay.
I'm good to go.
Yeah, I don't have
all
a
the time in the world.
limit.
Okay, I think we'll probably stop short of 4 hours. I'm guessing a couple hours. Willie, what do you have?
I have very little time. I'm waiting on my family to get back from the beach. I stayed here because I love you guys that much.
Everyone give yourself a hug for and in behalf of William Santilli.
Please. And make them big, bear, burly hugs too.
Oh!
You can probably tell by like my camera equipment that I am, I'm not in the place that I typically am. So it's I'm working on kind of some laptops and older stuff. So
that's great.
My audio might come off wrong. My video has a low refresh rate, but I'm here. So whenever the family does return, I gotta make
cool.
dinner for them.
Got it. Carl, when do you have to bug out?
I got about 30 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, let's get into it. Let's get some done. Hunter, are you in for a couple hours maybe?
Yeah, I can do like 3:15, 3:30 my time, so like an hour and 20 more or so.
All right. I would like to see if we can knock out at least 3 target areas. We'll see if we can get to all of this. But I'm going to suggest, but then I want to get your input. If we were to, again, I heard some convergence, some overlap on this idea of tools of like, from the mixed mental arts, oeuvre. What are some tools that are coming together that would be helpful, would be news? Hunter's tired of hearing me talk about this, but in innovation, we're always looking for the intersection of uniqueness and relevance. It can't just be unique because that's where people go and they try it and they go, oh, look at this really cool thing. They try it and they go, I don't need to use it again. I don't need to worry about it. If it's only relevant, it's just hard to break through. It's hard to cut through because people look at it and go, yeah, it's pretty much just like everything else. So we're really pushing for both uniqueness and relevance. I'm suggesting just a broad headline of, like tools for the 21st century education, 21st century education toolkit. Does that seem like a decent starting point? All right. What I'm going to do is give you some stimulus to help you think about this then in a non-obvious way, to get some stretch and to see what you can learn from that. And what I want to do is I want to send each of you mentally to a different context or a different world. This is actually in our work, we call this a world's excursion. And what I want you to do, again, having a notepad or something there to kind of work some of this out is going to be helpful. I'm going to send you to this place, and I'm going to ask you to find an example of a really effective, interesting, less than obvious tool. And I'm going to ask you to kind of lay out what the dimensions are of that. What are the qualities, the characteristics, and attributes of this tool in that new world or that new context? And don't worry about tying it back to education yet. Spend some time with it. So for example, if I were going to the world of the rodeo, my tool might be a lasso. And what's true about a lasso is that it's really compact, but it can cover some territory, right? And there can be some expertise that you have to acquire in order to get kind of some dexterity and some aiming capability and everything. But it's a really effective tool once you work some of that out, and it can actually pull in to you whatever the object is. Oh my goodness, it's Mandy Ainsley. Holy shnikes. Welcome, madame. So from that, I can learn of these different properties now of a new tool and conceptually being able to aim over some distance and pull something back into what I'm working on. I don't know what all that is, but I could use that now as a starting point, and I could bring it back to education. You know, how can I have a conceptual lasso somehow and play with that, and then I can start to build that out. So that was the world of the rodeo. Carl, I want to send you to the world of, I'm trying to get what is the right context for Carl. I want to send Carl to the world of the theater. I would like to send Hunter to the world of children's toys. I would like to send Claire to the world of zoology. I would like to send Trevor to the world of, I'm just making this up. I hope it's clear. To the world of, let's just go on. It's a little on the nose, but let's see what we can learn from it. Auto mechanics. I'm going to send William to the world of geopolitics. So again, go to your context, think of any tool. You don't have to think, it's not a test. You don't have to be right. This is only to get you thinking about tools for education in a non-obvious way. So is everyone clear on where you're going and what your task is? All right, take a couple minutes, jot down some thoughts, and then we can start entering them into the chat.
So I'm looking for a tool for geopolitics.
Yeah, like a summit. A summit is a tool.
Verbally or just in the chat or both?
Just use that. And again, what you're trying to do is get various dimensions of the tool in that context. There aren't just the most obvious dimensions of a tool in education. We're trying to bring newness to tools in education. So what can we learn from, in your case, Trevor, auto mechanics, that would be really interesting and be great to have this kind of capability now in an educational, in a tool for a 21st century toolkit for education. We're leaning hard on metaphor here, obviously. That's the idea.
It's supposed to be a little ridiculous, right?
Well, there's usually, so I'll just give you an idea. So Claire, you have zoology, right?
Yeah.
So look, we're just playing. I just instantly went to, and I don't even know if this exists, but the point is it doesn't matter because I just want to see where this goes. My intuition said, what could we learn from elephant forceps? I don't know, but the notion of, you know, there's a lot you could do there, and all the metaphors of birth and everything, birth at large scale and everything, really kind of interesting. And again, you don't have to have a seamless kind of success logic train now coming. It's just to get you to think about tools in a new way.
Should have a timer as to when these ideas are to be hatched.
Yeah, let's take another 45 seconds.
Roger that.
And then we'll help each other. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, an intrepid volunteer, please raise your hand and share out verbally. Mr. Motz, where did you go again?
Children's toys.
So what did that make you think of?
He-Man action figure that I had as a kid.
And what can we learn from a He-Man action figure that makes us think about educational tools for the 21st century in a new way?
Yeah, one of the coolest things about the He-Man action figure was that unlike the G.I. Joe action figure that had articulating joints, it had pieces of rubber that held the joints on. So it was like amazingly childproof because you could just pull it apart and they would snap back too. You literally couldn't fuck this thing up. It was indestructible. So I think indestructibility, flexible, empowers others to create. Like, he didn't have like a kung fu action grip. He couldn't do much. So you had to fill in with your own imagination. Non-toxic, I think is really important. Cheap to make. Most of the value actually comes from the branding. So, you know, you could make virtually the same guy, but it was because he had the logo on him and the recognizable sword that was connected to this larger world that made him powerful. I think part of the larger world is also really important because, you know, He-Man was a great gateway drug into, you know, Grayskull and She-Ra and lots and lots of other things. You can reboot it endlessly, like a great franchise. You can just like constantly dust it off and reinvent it to keep it relevant. Yeah, that those sorts of franchises and toys have a mixture of nostalgia for the older generation and novelty for the new generation.
I love that. And what I love about what you brought back there is there may or may not have been like a user's manual, but wasn't it just pretty? I mean, it's just intuitive. You could grab it, you could figure out really quickly what all you could do with it. But again, because it wasn't such focused, dedicated capabilities, you really could do a lot more with it. Like you said, because it didn't have the specific, karate chop set up in the hand, you could do more with it. And just, you can imagine now He-Man going to lots of other different places, doing lots of other things. Very good. Type up any of those parts into the chat on YouTube. Awesome. Let's go to William. I forgot where I sent you. What world did I send you to?
You sent me to geopolitics.
All right. So what's a tool, an implement, anything you picked there, and what can we learn from that?
Well, I didn't seem to go to a specific tool, more so a requirement.
Oh, nice.
And the requirement would be any law that is passed or enacted, whether it's locally or geopolitically, that the legislators meet with the people that the law affects.
Oh, nice.
So, and that's kind of what this meeting is we're talking about things that affect our vocation.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I like the notion of really thinking through, like, really who all is within the constituency of the work that we're doing here. And for future work, maybe we can get on. Wouldn't it be cool to get on at least one or two parents? What if we could get on here with us, like a couple of sharp, high school juniors, whatever, and just get them right into the mix. That's a key part of the work that we do, is always to ask that question, whose perspective might be helpful here in stretching out our thinking and really making sure that we're getting 360-degree ideas. Very cool.
And I think, honestly, there's no better evaluator of education than the people that are going through education. They can tell you probably better than us what the problems are, what they love, what they hate. What they cannot tell you, and I think what none of us can say with any certainty, is the direction of the world. So we're preparing them for jobs that don't exist. And they're entering a world where they don't know what vocation is actually a, would be a good vocation. For example, at Western University in Kalamazoo, Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, the teacher vocation used to graduate around 2,000 teachers back in 2006. This year they were down to, I think, around 250. So
wow,
they are foreseeing that they don't want to be in that vocation. But I mean, that it goes much bigger than that. If we are truly preparing them for something more than just secondary education, then what are we preparing them for? And secondly to that, what in education do they value, and what would they like to see more of? And I'll pass the mic.
A quote I really like, William, this is bringing up is, I don't remember who it was. It was Alan Kay, and I think it's one of the Apple fellows, who early on said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And I noticed you have I think, is that a 6-string or a bass, William? Oh, it is a 6-string. Oh no, hold it. I only see 4 strings, right? I can't really tell. The resolution isn't.
It's just a ukulele. I'm just.
Oh, it is a ukulele. It's distorted. It looked like a big, acoustic bass or something. I love the ukulele. I was just playing mine earlier today.
I lost my ears. Oops.
Yeah. But that's great. And the idea of actually getting kids and parents in on this to help. So again, the quote was, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And it's really easy for us to figure out how we're disempowered and we really don't have any kind of control. And that's a really lovely thought, but we can never be part of that. And of course, that's horse flop. And horse flop is actually a technical term in our biz. And we should get people involved and really going on this. So thank you so much. Let me go now to Mr. Martin. What was your world, and what did you do with it?
You asked me to think about the theater. So I mean, the easy initially, what's the right answer? I guess the right answer is I'm supposed to say spotlight, and I'm supposed to say something about it.
There's no right answer.
Like
no
attention,
right answer.
But that wasn't the first word that came to mind.
Nice.
So on the one hand, yeah, the idea of a spotlight, I think it would be useful if this group generated extended and extensive metaphors, alternatives to the ones that are offered in the straight A conspiracy. I think that's a resource that educators could use to really try to move that material further. So spotlight is attention, but you said the theater, I thought the fourth wall, and good luck trying to work that out. But the best I could come up with is that I guess the fourth wall in the theater would be the equivalent of kind of breaking through the idea of there being staged performance and being conscious of the performer, which would be, I guess, like the educator or the educatee being conscious of the learning process as opposed to the finished product of performance.
I love that. And well, and kind of what William brought up earlier, the idea of how to pass the mic to the students. So how can we come up with tools that actually we can present to the students so that they can be the performers? Yeah, cool. Let's go on to Claire and the wonderful world of zoology.
Okay, so zoology. First thing I thought of, because to be honest, the only thing I could think of was a thermometer. And then I thought of taking rectal temperatures. And I went to some really dark places. So instead of what I focused on, literally, like, pun intended, yes. Dark places.
Some very dark places.
So instead I focused on was, like, in order to even have, like, the zoology situation, I thought about, like, the experience of going to a zoo and the exhibits of the zoo. So you have, like, I just went to the San Diego Zoo, and they have like each different like cluster of animals, but it's not just like segregated elephants and segregated zebras. Like they fit into a thematic group of animals that fits all into the experience of one at the zoo.
Sweet.
So comparing that to education and comparing that to like a curricular like tool framework, how do we make the entire experience fit together like the zoological experience of a goer to the zoo, where I am thematically having everything brought together, and it's not segmented unit on segmented unit, or even segmented math, segmented, like bringing them all together to one educational experience, as opposed to I'm only going to see elephants and only going to learn about elephants, and then I'm going to get really fucking bored of elephants. That's so there.
I love that. And, you know, and so in mixed mental arts, we talk a lot about, you know, the Western, you know, instinct toward atomism versus, you know, more of the Eastern holism. What I like of what you're bringing up here is thinking more holistically is one thing in general. Some of the specifics here of how to do that, like how to find a theme to tie it all together. And now they're still hitting all the subjects, but the subjects are situated within something that maybe is just more interesting, more compelling, more that they can just embrace more easily and get maybe a little more excited about. That's really cool. All right. And Mr. Trevor.
All right. So I was in the world of the mechanic. And the first thing I thought of was just a mechanic sitting by a car, and right next to him was his trusty toolbox.
Yeah.
Not the tools within it, but the box itself. It's the packaging is convenient. It has all the tools that one might need. How often are his tools like spread out all over the shop? And if he only had this convenient place to store all of his tools and to make his tools accessible and easy and efficient, he'd know how to use them in a more effective, efficient way. You know, if we package our suite of tools in a way that is intuitive and makes sense, you know, we're going to know the right piece. We're not going to have to look and dig through our bag. We can just reach out, grab it, and apply it, and no time is wasted. Also, the tool box is a kind of a shiny way to advertise the tools within. The tools within might not be that fancy. They're just steel or other metals that I don't know. But yeah, I take my car to a mechanic a lot. I don't do much myself. But what's on the outside is the branding on the box, right? So the tools within are what are actually effective, what are actually useful. But you can kind of get people to buy those tools by packaging the toolbox in a way that is appealing to people who are looking for the tools. And it just kind of all comes down to convenience, packaging, and I guess if we're going to apply to education, there's no shortage of strategies and methodologies and everything. But I think what's kind of missing is a platform or a toolbox that you can kind of upload those into that kind of give them context and purpose beyond their own sort of atomized utility.
I love that. So I loved your point about, hey, any one tool may not be all that sexy, but when they're situated nicely in a really cool toolbox, that you get this feeling of empowerment. You get the sense of, yeah, I can pretty much take on anything. I'm going to be able to stay here in this moment and get an awful lot done. I don't have to step away to go hunt. And Trevor, I got to tell you, if you haven't got it yet, the newest punch-alls that are made from Californium are really just fantastic pieces. You really should get.
I was immediately going to vibranium, but that's
unobtainium. All right. That's really cool. I got everyone right. Okay. Mine was on the spur of the moment to model it, and it was a lasso. And I really now, when we get off the call, I'm going to flesh out the idea of conceptual lasso and see what all we can do with that, because I think there's so much with all of these. When you get a really vivid metaphor, there are multiple points of intersection. There are multiple things you can do with it, and you can kind of surround the metaphor and really learn an awful lot from it. And then when you bring it back and apply it to the topic at hand, you really can get some specificity and richness that's awfully helpful. So we're getting some starting ideas here. I think what I want to encourage everyone to do is go back and look at the transcript from this, and build out further anything that's really exciting to you. Hunter, you had a thought?
Yeah, the one thing that I was, as you guys were talking about toolboxes, I was just reminded of the classic Winston Zedmore line from Ghostbusters, where he said, "We've got the tools, we've got the talent," you know. And I think that sense of really like, holy shit, like we've been through Act 1 and Act 2 of this movie. We now have all the fucking exposure, the skills, the gadgets, and we're ready to face Zool. Like,
That's great.
That's what I want for educators everywhere. And in a sense, like we've talked about this idea before with Chris Ryan and some other people, and I know that, you know, this is something that Trevor and Claire really resonate with, is, you know, in general, like I think we are at that moment in humanity's hero's journey where like we went through some shit in Act 1 and Act 2 of the human story. And now this is the long, dark night of the soul. It feels like all is lost. I feel like we're kind of fucked. But if we aggregate all the lessons we've had so far, then we can have everything we need to do to break into Act 3 and face the final challenge.
Well, and that's what makes the drama all the more compelling, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's perfect. And of course, I want to figure out now the various ways in education how there is no Dana, only Zool. So, all right, let's go to, I think Carl dropped off, but we can certainly, I want to look at the other questions up front. What are the big areas we can go after? Trevor, I really want to go with, I responded to it, and I heard William respond to it well, your language around, you know, giving teachers autonomy, seize the means of curriculum.
Yeah.
Should we spend some time on that?
Yeah.
All right. Tee it up a little bit more for us. Give us, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. Say more. Why is this of interest to you? What, you know, when I ask you kind of prioritize, what are some big things that we could go after and do something about? Why did you pick this?
No
pressure. This doesn't have to be perfect.
So for me, when you look at what effective teachers do for their students, they hook them in and they explain to them why what they're going to teach is important. And then they empower them with a set of skills or attributes or tools that the students can then use. And through the success they experience, and because they see the value and the utility of those tools, they then that's how I think you kind of hook kids to becoming like the lifelong learner. That's sort of like the, you know, educational buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. And I feel like we don't necessarily do that for our teachers. Like we need to, whatever power structures above teachers. I wish that there was a way, and I feel like, you know, we're at a point now where teachers can do it themselves, where they provide a suite of tools and skills to empower each other. And I guess kind of going back to my toolbox, they're out there right now, but they're not packaged in a way that is efficient or succinct. If you want to seize the means of curriculum, you just kind of look around and everybody is kind of plugging away in their own, I guess, separate sphere, or they have their project that they're working on, but there's no sort of cohesion or no unity. I feel like that's kind of a problem, because whether we're separated by district or by school or even by department, there's no real feeling of, I guess cohesion is where I keep coming back to. Like we need a platform on that we can kind of congregate around. And I feel like coming up with a set of tools to kind of tell teachers and show teachers how that can be easier, or how their teaching can be easier, would be a good kind of step in the right direction. So it's less changing the system and more developing our own system that can work within the box. So like not necessarily innovating outside the box, but innovating within the box, because teachers are going to say, you know, I have an SOL test or a Common Core test that I have to give, and, you know, I can't innovate because, you know, I have test scores. So what can we do to empower teachers to still live in the standardized testing ecosystem we're in, but also feel like they can innovate or they can have a sense of power or autonomy. So I guess it's innovating within the box, so then teachers can still teach the curriculum that's given to us, but in a way that makes them feel like they have a sense of control or purpose when they do so.
Very cool. That's very helpful. And
can I just say that I love
Please.
that? And part of what I really love about that is that when I hear you talking, Trevor, it sounds like you're talking about Starbucks employees. Like, I worked at Starbucks as one of my first jobs out of college, and it was like amazing to me the way that they had no faith in the intelligence of their employees. Like, the whole system had been designed so that it was like, oh, we've removed all thought for you. All you have to do is just press fucking buttons, and it's plug and play, and we actually don't want you to create. And we put lines on the cups so you know how much ice to put in, and you like, and I part of the reason why I don't teach in a school is because it's clear that that's the experience of a lot of educators right now. Like, somebody designs the venti mocha frappuccino of history, and then your job is just to put 3 pumps in, and it doesn't work. That doesn't work in education. I don't know that it works in coffee, but it certainly doesn't work in education.
Cool. Let's here's what I want to do. In the YouTube chat, I just opened up a heading called Elements of Education. So list all that's involved. And so it can be people, it can be things, it can be policy, it can be really anything. So what I'd like to do is just get a bunch of stimulus there about the elements of education, and then I'll tell you what to do with that in just a moment. So go over there. There's technology, perfect. Curriculum, love it, love it. The community, the parents, the teacher's room, the lesson plan, the funded, nice. It could be cultural. It could be systems, multiple inanimate things pulled together into a cohesive whole. Good. Proper nutrition, Guy, thank you so much. That's perfect. I understand it. Love it. Let's just get a few more, and then I'm going to tell you what our next step is. I'm doing this all on the fly. So bear with me and bring your own brilliance. All right. We got some good stuff. You can certainly come up with more, but I want you to do now is even kind of at random, pick any 2 of those. And I say random because if they make sense, it just might not push as far for uniqueness. And what I want you to do here is the excursion that we are going to do. So this is autonomy. Teacher sees the means of curriculum. The excursion is relationships. And it occurred to me a few years ago that guess what prepositions are? Prepositions describe relationships. Kind of physically in space or conceptually, you can pick any preposition and put one noun before it and another noun after and see where that takes you. So for example, so I have here above, beyond, I'm trying to read off the screen. Alongside, after, instead of, during, because of, on top of, below, before. Any others, there are, literally, you can pick any more than what I have here. And so let's just play this out. So if I go back up to our list and I pick curriculum because of parents. I don't know what that means, but I can start to play with it And if I were to try now to come up with something that maybe that's too on the nose for some of you, I don't know. But how can we turn it into a feature, not a bug, right? How can we use that to help us? Maybe that's too easy. But thinking now of creating autonomy for teachers to seize the means of curriculum, how can I use the idea of getting some kind of involvement, some kind of relationship with parents before developing the curriculum? And again, not all parents are created equal, as we know. Like, what kind of parent? Like, how could we find parents who could really be massive assets in the right way? And then, of course, there are all the political issues you'll have later with the ones you don't involve. But we'll address that later. But again, we're just trying to use it as a spur. Or I could pick, standards on top of students' individualities. And those are both from Claire. I don't know what that means either, but it starts to get me thinking different. I'm just trying to get different stimulus. I'm trying to get different relationships going. So I'd like you to do now is take a moment, pick any two of these, and just kind of swap out different prepositions. Again, you've got some of them here. You can come up with more. Right? And then think what that is. What's the feeling of alongside? How is that different than the feeling of instead of? Right? And it's just a way of making interesting combinations. All innovation is just fun, combinatorial fun. So that's all we're trying to do here. And you don't need to be literal, and the preposition need not appear in any idea that you generate from this. I'm going to shut up now. Do you have it? You have the idea? All right. I'm going to set the clock for 2.5 minutes.
Oh, we're just typing this right now.
All right, you have about 30 seconds, and then we can go back and do some more, but we'll get it going. Okay. Well, that was interesting. I have one. So no, I won't go first. I'll resist the urge. All right. An intrepid volunteer. Who wants to go? All right, Claire. Claire,
So
what do you have?
I came up with 4. So curriculum inside of community.
Nice.
Teachers,
Just do them one by one.
okay.
Or did you pull them together into one?
Oh, no, I was just like spitballing and came up with 4.
Oh, okay. Did you take like the next step on any of them? So like, what could that mean?
I can go into what that would mean.
To pick one where you see what you could do with that, and
Okay.
then you want a moment to do that?
No, I got it.
Okay, go for it. I like it.
Okay. Home life inside of teachers' classrooms is
Yeah.
the one that I want to. I don't know who this person is. I'm sorry. I've got distracted. Okay. ADHD. Home life inside of teachers' classrooms. So the fact that each student, what they bring in with them, for a teacher to turn to a student, because I mean, I hear it literally all the time, like screamed throughout other classrooms. Just taking a walk in any educational building will yield more sorrow than it will hope, unfortunately, on any given day. And a lot of the things that I keep that like I hear from teachers, or what I see, is a lot of aggression against what the kids are bringing into the classroom with them. And what I think that our job is to do is not ignore the home life situation. Don't ignore the individuality. I mean, like a lot of the stuff that William was putting in here, they were very like ideological. They weren't like on the surface. Like you can't sit and be like, show me your vulnerability, and a kid can't pull that out like a cell phone. But that doesn't mean that it's not still something that's a part of the curriculum and a part of the teacher's classroom.
I like it.
I think that our main job as teachers is to harness what the students are bringing in with them, to the best of our ability as teachers. Don't ignore the fact that maybe they come from an impoverished background, or maybe they versus the kid they're sitting next to completely different socioeconomic statuses. That can be a learning situation for like anybody in the classroom. I mean, I can give countless examples of kids who have just talking about anything, and like how it has opened up a door for another student because it's just a different perspective from theirs. So
love it. Okay, distill that and type it into the chat if you would.
Distilling away.
All right. Trevor, what do you have, sir?
I kept going back to one, and that was purpose over process. And I think that right now there's, like I was saying earlier, there's no shortage of tools or methods that teachers can use to do a really good job getting their students to do well on tests, or passing this end of year exam, or understanding, whatever set bit of standards that has been assigned by, the Department of Ed. But I feel like this kind of ties back into what Willie was saying earlier. Why are we teaching them? Why are we learning? Why do we teach kids? Yeah. And I think that's something that we forget about a lot of times. It's education has sort of been this march through information that kids must learn because, that's just the way that things have always been. And in this post-Google, post-iPhone world, I really think we need to kind of reconceptualize what teaching looks like. Because the idea of just limited, insular information, little bits of fact can just be Googled. And kids don't see the value or utility in this, tiny insulated knowledge. But for whatever reason, we're really concerned that they know this little insular material really well, but we don't ever really pay attention to why are we teaching it to them.
Yeah, the whole notion, a lot of discussion with Hunter and others on, the meaning gap, the purpose gap, and how, in an age where facts are, excuse me, I'm from that part of the country where we make no distinction between FAX and FACTS. I can't pronounce those two words differently. Facts. But where facts are a commodity and, pretty accessible and everything, then the value of meaning, the value of context, the value of purpose, I think grows exponentially. And so how to get that in there and help teachers have that sense, certainly, but then also to the extent that that can be nurtured and then nurtured for and then embraced by students seems like a really cool opportunity. William, what's yours? And then again, Trevor, type in any idea, anything else that comes from that.
I guess it would be, I was really just trying to go off what you guys were saying.
Perfect. We'll take anything, man.
Well, the idea of putting prepositions between, anyways, I'm thinking grow through understanding and grow through vulnerability. And this goes back to the initial comment of what we can fix. Even a single teacher in a classroom can make a huge impact on, you know, education at large. If you start affecting children's lives, if you start positively affecting children's lives, people tend to follow suit, even if they don't even like you, because they see results, they see growth.
Yeah.
And I really think that's what education actually is. It's not I don't really give a shit about the test scores. I don't give a shit about the standards or the objectives. And I say that, I say that to anybody who would listen, even the people who evaluate me. The one thing that I focus in on, like a laser beam, is personal relationships. Before I can ever get through to any child about any sort of curriculum or even what a preposition is, they have to first teach me who they are, what they're about, and they have to know that I actually care. They can't think it's a paycheck.
Yeah.
So growth through understanding was that, and then growth through vulnerability. I'm an English teacher. I'm, you know, certified in AP. I've taught every secondary grade. Now doing African American Lit, elements of forensics, debate, mock trial, and I'm a horrible speller. I've always been an absolutely atrocious speller. I start my year telling them that, and then they'll even say, how did you get your degree with being a horrible speller? And I'll say things like, well, tell me a phone number that you remember. Because I mean, what's the point of learning those things when it can be done for you? Why memorize anything that you can look up, I suppose?
Yeah.
Not that it isn't important, but I would much rather work on vocabulary than I would work on the spelling of that vocabulary. Not to say that it isn't important, but I have to show them that I am not perfect. I have to show them that I'm not just there for a paycheck. And I have to be authentic. So grow through vulnerability, grow through understanding.
Love it. Very cool, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Motz.
Well, what I wrote is technology above curriculum, but what I wish for is curriculum above technology. And I feel like so much of the power dynamic that we've been talking about is the fact that, you know, I mean, especially in the last, I mean, this is for Katie and I, this has been so much of the frustration is we hear constantly that the key to saving kids is iPads. And if we could just have more fucking iPads, then all their problems would be solved. And then, you know, we're working with like the ultra wealthy kids who have 3 iPads and they break a new one every week and get a new one every week. And they're still a fucking clusterfuck. And it's like the iPad didn't do it for that kid. And then we'll go work with some kid in foster care. And it's like, okay, you don't have an iPad, but you do have a textbook that you have literally never opened.
Building off of that, like when I just do my end of the year survey and last year, and I was blown away because we had iPads, we had Kindles, we had Chromebooks. We did like a unit about the Serial podcast. They acted out. They did all kinds of crazy stuff. But at the end of the year, their favorite thing that we did I think like 75% of my kids were on their survey, sitting in a circle and talking about humans after we read Lord of the Flies. And it's like all of this fancy, crazy stuff that, you know, that I thought was really, you know, was hooking them. At the end of the day, it was just talking, like having a chance and an opportunity to feel like they were being heard and they were talking about something that mattered and was meaningful. I think that was like one of the most powerful like pieces of feedback I've ever got.
So I like soul inside of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to build off of what Trevor's saying, like the number one thing that Katie O'Brien always talks about as like peak teacherness, like what is the ultimate in educational excellence, was an experience she had as a kid. And it was their first day of doing To Kill a Mockingbird. And they all came in and there was a printed out piece of paper. And on that printed out piece of paper was some weird ass poem. And she started reading it. And then they realized it like all at once that it was the lyrics to Gwen Stefani's I'm Just a Girl. And they were like, holy shit. And then they were like, oh my God, this is so cool. We're talking about Gwen Stefani. Like our teacher is so hip. And then, you know, he then proceeds to connect all of those themes into the novel and to set up the novel. And like,
wow,
what did that cost? It cost whatever it cost to print out, you know, a bunch of pieces of paper in the 90s. So I just think that, you know, Silicon Valley has had its chance. Like they've tried to fix education and that's fucking great. And meanwhile, teachers have felt really fucking disempowered. And I just love the idea of the teacher's revolution and seizing the means of curriculum. And if you get a whole bunch of teachers from all over the world just creating curriculum above technology and just curriculum that's so fucking awesome, like that's what changes people's lives, not fucking iPads.
Excellent. Hunter, go ahead and boil that down and type it in if you would. I did, my two nouns were students and curriculum. And then I took 3 different prepositions, but I didn't do what you thought I would. So you see if you can spot the pattern here. I did students before, during, and
After?
No, because that would be too obvious. Before, during, and in front of curriculum. I thought, okay, I'm just doing this to be arch now, but no, I'm doing it deliberately to try to break the pattern. And where could that take me that's different? And the idea I came up with is of when teachers are seizing the means of producing curriculum, they're actually prototyping it and they're engaging their student, because any good innovation is co-creation, right? So that's what we do with our clients all the time. We have them and we have the most creative of their customers involved in the process. And so now you get input from students before round 1. You get inputs from students during it. So you're checking in with them now and saying, okay, what I thought I heard was this. I pulled this together. What do you think? Let's talk about it. Let's tweak it. And then lastly, for the final kind of, not even necessarily the end stage, but a later stage, it's actually then you turn it over to the students and the students then actually present it, because now they've been so part of the process that, you know, we all know, you know, it's almost trite for me to tell teachers this stuff, but you know, how much more we have to master something when we're prepping to teach it rather than just learn it. And so by that 3rd round, now the students are so well versed in where you're going that they've got such a kind of handle on it that they could actually teach it. So that's my before, during, and in front of curriculum. All right.
Can I build on what you're saying, Adam?
Please.
You know, the number of people I've heard, whether it's, you know, students having a new experience or parents who did well in school sharing their own experience, say that the whole point is that you spend all this time making the study guide. And then once you've made the study guide, if you've made it well, you actually don't really need to study, because you've had to organize all the material in your head and on that piece of paper, and then it sticks. And so
content plus content, content plus context, and having that full context. So real meaning making, not just, you know, unconnected factoids.
I think that context piece is so huge. Like kids are always asking why. Why are we learning this? Why are we learning that? What's the utility in this? You know, how will this help me? And when you bake into your instruction, your curriculum, purpose and context, and it's a journey towards finding meaning as opposed to a journey towards memorizing facts.
Oh, I love it.
I think that's the secret sauce that's missing right now, because there are a lot of, especially right now in the sort of educational ecosystem, there are a lot of tools that help teachers really assess what their students know, and teachers have a very clear understanding of what their students know, what they don't need to know. What they know and what they don't know. But the problem is, I think a lot of kids don't know why they need to know that. And once they master that tidbit of knowledge, it doesn't connect to anything. There's no broader purpose or direction beyond doing well on a test to then do well on your GPA to then go to college. And it's just sort of like the meaning and the context of the education process has just been stripped out of education because they're so linear.
So this is dorky, and I hope you find some value in it, but it's come back to me a couple times, and I thought, well, my intuition is pinging me, so I should probably share it. We do a lot of what's called concept development. So we do ideation, and then the next step is to bring we do voting on, you know, all the output, and in one day of ideation, we'll generate 500 plus ideas, and we'll very quickly collapse that down and get into fleshed out concepts. Now, like, what would this actually look like? It's some of the what and some of the how around a new product or a new service now. And the structure is, what's the insight? I mean, what's going on in the life of the customer before the product or service comes into the picture that sets the stage for the product or service to come in and matter. Then what's the benefit? Now the product or service makes its appearance, but we only really care about it, not for itself, but for what it does for us, or what is it? I get what because of this, right? And then lastly is reasons to believe, or what would a skeptical person need to hear in order to believe that that benefit could actually be delivered. And when I keep hearing test scores, to me, that's reasons to believe for a benefit. That's not the benefit. The benefit is an empowered, capable person who can go out into the world and be just a badass, a really fantastic badass, right? And I mean, to keep putting test scores, like, who gives a rip if that's not tied somehow to this thunder lizard out into the world to go create wonderful things, then the test score really becomes like, I don't even care about it. And so, like, it's great to talk about these various reasons to believe, test scores, performance on assignments turned in, homework, all that and everything. But ultimately, what's really the master benefit that we're trying to create here? And how can we get increasingly better at that? And how can we do that in ways that are unique and relevant? 100.
And reasons to believe, test scores are reasons to believe for which constituency? For governments.
Yeah.
And I mean, to what Trevor was saying as well, like, there is such, like, students have never been told why they need to know what they're learning because it wasn't their place historically. Right?
Yeah.
There is this, in the current educational paradigm, there is this baked in father knows best set of assumptions. Like, we, the central planners, have figured out what you need, what's going to serve you. And, we don't really trust the people in the schools. So we're going to design this curriculum. And it is all based on, like, yes, we know best.
100, but seriously, I mean, if you can't have contempt for the people who are doing the most important work, kind of at the chain of command, then just for whom can you have that contempt? I think it's really wonderful. It's yeah.
And when you have that level of contempt for those people, imagine how superior you get to feel.
Yeah, and that's right. And it's, you know, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? I mean, it's just so much of human history is people being preoccupied with being right than being effective. And damn it, we've got to change that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I think that's the thing. I think reasons to believe, like, I think, you know, reasons to believe for students is comparatively easy, right? I think part of it is also going to be retraining what metrics parents are looking for and helping them connect what their everyday experience is to, you know, curriculum and what we're doing.
Yeah.
But there's also an element, and I guess I shouldn't have said but. I think.
What do you wish for, Willie?
I wish we all had the same experience. What do you do for? Oh, I guess I'm going to use a hypothetical too. That's another rule I'm breaking. I'm breaking everything.
No, it's all good, Willie. It's all
broken it all. It's all broken.
We're not overly invested in rules, man.
Okay. Well, I was just. What about the kid who doesn't give a rip about test scores or even graduating? I mean,
why?
Why what?
Why do they not care? Like
maybe the culture doesn't value education. Maybe
are there people within the culture who have?
I'm sorry.
Well, again, I'm trying not to be flip here. I get that, but so maybe your culture doesn't value education. Are there examples of people within that culture who actually have? And why did it, like, what was behind them making that connection? It's always trying to peel it back and see why connections aren't being made, right?
Maybe. Yeah. Well, and I think if we were to peel it back, and it does go to the root of the issue is how does one find value in education?
Yeah.
And how do you make somebody, in my assessment of that, is someone has to value themselves, and that is a really hard thing to do, especially when you're dealing with 150 kids. If your top flyers, your AP kids, your honors kids, they're going to be successful if you're their teacher or not. It's the bottom 30% who will probably drop out. Or, worse, it's the prison to high school to prison pipeline that interests me a lot. Not that I always want to teach them either. It's much. It seems. It's much easier to teach kids who value education. It's very difficult to teach kids who do not. When you say have a purpose, or already see the value, it's much more difficult when you have that vast gulf to traverse. It's a much harder road to hoe. But now I'm talking about something that is different. But I was just, I guess I was kind of critiquing every educator on the panel's experience. Which I shouldn't have done.
I think, Willie, we've all had the diversity of student desire, right? From kids who are like fired up, ready to go, they've got a specific goal, they're there, or, even better, like they just love learning in general, and therefore they're like, I don't care what you teach, I want to know it. And you're like, oh, yay, it's Christmas in July. Yay. And then, there are the kids who don't seem to be interested in anything. And then, you really do have to like dig to say, okay, what do you care about? Money. Oh, fuck. Okay, you just care about money. Great. Okay, how do we make that relevant to your desire for money? Okay, how do you think you're going to make money? And then, that you start to talk to them and they sort of have this very much this lottery winner mindset of, well, so-and-so was just sitting around and then they invented money. And then you're like, okay, let's dig into that. Like, okay, yes, these people were rich. What did they do to get rich? How does fortune favor the prepared mind? What was the process of their success? So I think part of it might be is that we have to think about different constituencies and maybe like, what's the sort of the like for that third of kids who all they care about is getting laid and getting paid, like what is the sort of alternative curriculum and alternative toolbox that is just lensed through that very specific focus? Like what's the business school without having to go to business school?
But it's almost as if, and it reminds me, my family's here, so I might have to skate after this. It reminds me of tracking in education, the German model. For those who don't see the value, then there are if it's just about getting paid, then there are vocations that will pay much better than some educated vocations.
Yep.
You don't need a 4-year degree in liberal arts if you're going to turn a wrench. And turning a wrench is completely and totally respectable and is even more needed at this time.
Got it. Claire, what do you have?
I want to jump onto what Willie was saying
it's what I struggle with quite a bit. It's what I love digging into, because if we find the secret sauce to that, that's worth writing a book on.
Cool.
And I'll kind of end with that.
Excellent.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks so much,
Willie.
Willie.
Here longer.
Right on, brother.
I love you. And
there will be more.
This
is not the only one. This is just the first. This is just the first one. Take care, brother. All right, Claire, what do you have?
Well, I was going to respond to Willie, but then he ran.
No, you can respond to us.
I'm going to respond to everybody else, and Willie.
That's right.
Later.
Right on.
So prior to teaching in Nova, Bougie Nova, where I currently reside, I was an educator in very rural Arizona, and before that, very inner city Ohio. And what I found through all 3 teaching experiences that I've had in all of the collective years that I have putting them together is exactly what we're talking about here, is that, like, yes, every kid from every background, like there are those that struggle with the desire to stay in education. And I want to actually attach this to what you were saying. I had students in Arizona who lived on the reservation, or from the reservation, which was 60 miles north. And the Hualapai tribe, it was very ingrained in their culture, this idea that you don't get more education than your parents. And the vast majority of the parents had dropped out of high school when they were in 10th grade. So our biggest struggle was to keep those students in school past 10th grade. And that was, you had to get at the root of the culture. But where I found the success of that was by bringing the culture of the student into the classroom and giving them the ability to invest in their own education. Because when we, to bring it back, pass the mic, turn it over into the students' hands, have them critically analyze why their own education is relevant, what we do is we give them the clay, and then we have them mold their own experiences. We can do that still with literature. We can do that still with grammar. Like, I'm also a really shitty speller at Willie. And like my first day in every single classroom that I've had, every year that I've taught, the first thing I say is, how many of you have ever had somebody stand in front of you and demand your trust and your respect just because they're standing and you're sitting? And every kid raises their hand in the classroom, because we've all been in that situation. But the classroom environment, the biggest shift that needs to happen is this shift from I'm right, you're wrong, I'm big, you're small at Matilda. And more toward we are all in a collaborative experience together. The teacher is still learning. The teacher is still engaging in that educational experience while the student is learning, while the student is also engaging in their own educational experience.
That's wonderful. That's very cool. Folks, there's been some really great stuff. I've been using this, and I don't know what the intent is of everyone here, but I've been making the supposition that this is really just the first. So I'm already thinking about, okay, how would I do a next one better? And I have several thoughts that I'm happy to send out to you. You were all on the email, correct?
Yeah.
It went out earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll send out some thoughts. I'd love to get your feedback. Again, I co-creation is what I do. So I actually sometimes imagine that I have the consistency of walking my own talk. And so would love to get your input on how to do this better, get even more, keep the conversation going. That last line, keep the conversation going, is something that really, really matters to me. I love what humans can create. I get to do that kind of work for a living, and I feel ridiculously fortunate to be able to do that kind of work with you. And so I would like to see how we now take this. We have some really great seedling ideas, some starter ideas. Feel free to grab any of them and anything you have heart for and flesh it out further. And I'm always happy to get on a chat with you, or you can call me up. I'll have my cell phone in the email. I'm happy to talk about any of this stuff anytime, because it's what I do and it's what I love doing.
So Hunter. Adam, actually, Trevor and I, this has been, because we already talked to Hunter, this is how we ended up getting on this group of human beings. We found each other in the beginning of the year and then came and were asking these same questions, and have actually developed a curriculum utilizing almost every single seedling that we've talked about here. So
awesome.
We want to know if maybe we can like schlep that over to you.
Yeah.
And because we gave Hunter the pitch and we're like super game on too. Because like we have a document that really hits home on every one of these issues and topics, and that we would like to use with collaborating with other professionals and such.
Right, dang on. Let's do it. And again, I heard Hunter tee it up as monomyth is a key word.
Yeah. Yes,
so
sir, it's the monomyth curriculum.
We're doing Joseph Campbell. Do I understand that?
Yep.
Yeah, centering it around the student as they are the hero on their own heroic journey.
Oh my God, Hunter!
Big question throughout the whole year, and then everything like feeds into it. I mean, we have like
so
we have it down to a science.
We've been. It started at the beginning of the year. We had this giant bowling ball of an idea, and I've been telling everyone I feel like I've been taking a bowling ball and trying to put it into a teacup, because it's the whole conversation we've been having is so big, and it's hard to fit. And I mean, I guess this is what this is your sauce. This is what you do, is taking these big giant ideas and figuring out how to shrink them down. So yeah, it's basically
and what you do is you just find so the research is pretty clear. The way to beget large success is first get lots of small successes going. So how can we break this down? Where can we go first and have a win there? But we know what the pattern is. We know what the blueprint is for the bigger thing.
Yeah.
But let's go win here. Let's test it. Let's try it. Let's get momentum going. Let's get people excited about it. And then that's how you build. And another metaphor Hunter's tired of hearing me use is, think of this as a set of bowling pins. And so what's the head pin that you can knock down first that makes it all the easier then to knock down the 2 and 3 pin, and then in succession the 4, 5, and 6 pin, and get a strike. And so starting to break it down some, what is the basic structure, the pieces of the basic structure that we can start to work on, get some sense on that priority, and get right on getting the head pin out there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And can I I think a couple of things, Adam. One, I think what they're doing and what they're talking about meshes very nicely with what Brian Edward Hill has been talking about.
That's exactly what I was saying. We need him on the next one. Yeah.
So I think we can do it would be good to do a specific ideation session, limit it to Trevor and Claire, and then Brian Edward Hill.
Oh, good Lord. That'd be so much fun. Don't you just want to be in that session?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
The other thing that I think that is really important to point out from what Claire was saying, in terms of the tribe whose name, I feel like George W. Bush, Will Ferrell playing George W. Bush in the 2000 SNL presidential skits, and that one tribe that lady there was talking about, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce its name.
Got it. There, yeah.
Strategery.
I won't. No, yeah, it's
Jalapa tribe.
They're one of the main players in the Grand Canyon. Show your respect.
Well, there goes my non-existent presidential career aspirations as a Saudi-born American. No, but what I was going to say is that, I think that really points up the importance of the fact that, curriculum generation has to be local. Like, if you're going to create a curriculum that is relevant to some Native American tribe that I've never even heard of, like, you need that local knowledge, because only they know their culture, their myth, their stories, their taboos, their cultural norms, all of that stuff. And then I think it really speaks to, like, what you were talking about in the chat, Adam, and with your preposition exercise, which is, this idea of really co-creating the curriculum. And I like the idea that, you're really delaminating the map of that curriculum every year and being like, okay, so, you had these experiences, we did the stuff with the Chromebook. Oh, and it turns out that the thing you most enjoyed was, talking about, Lord of the Flies and the human condition. Oh, great. So how should we all do this better the next year? Yeah, and then we're all constantly regenerating.
And I think going off of that is having the back to my toolbox analogy is having a platform that you can take those nuanced ideas and then plug them in, because a lot of teachers are sort of loath to reinvent the wheel and feel like they have to do everything over. So if we have a sort of set framework that you can then take those relevant ideas or themes, that whether it's happening in the local community or on a larger scale, and kind of plug and play those ideas into this overarching framework that is convenient and effective.
But they can also add their own autonomy to it, because another big problem is that, like, education is different from almost every other field, because everybody, when you are critiquing somebody else's educational whatever, they take it personally immediately, and they're like, you're calling me the worst teacher in the history of the world, and therefore I don't want to hear a word that comes out of your mouth. What we've put together, and like that was kind of touched on earlier too, what we've been like spitballing and we've been like pitching it to like our department and like different areas in our county, and now we're like pulling in some other counties on like the East Coast. What it does is it allows the teacher, it's an experiment that they feel a part of, as opposed to a prescription to fix their problem.
Love it. And of course, one of the best ways of disseminating is getting them on your team. And so now it's not you disseminating it, it's we're disseminating it, and we're all part of this.
I mean, teachers are always tired of feeling there's something else being foisted upon them, and they're being told what you've been doing is wrong.
Absolutely.
Here's the new thing.
Yeah.
Well, Trevor, it's not teachers. I mean, I don't know how old you were when you started feeling that way, but I started feeling that way when I was about 6.
It's true. This is true.
I've got this. Okay, give me some thoughts, and then I'll take it from there. And come on. But I mean, it really is just basic human understanding that I think we're talking about here. And so what's great is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's like when Trevor and I came together at the beginning of the year, it was like, so why don't we just kind of start spitball? And it started out like gigantic, and we've had our technology coach guy has really helped, because I have a tendency to be more of a sledgehammer as opposed to a guiding hand. So this is.
I wondered if that was just like you were stepping up for this particular meeting or something. I wasn't. I'm glad you clarified that.
That's my job, is to clarify myself
to clarify. I got it. Yeah. Good Lord.
Speaking of low-hanging fruit.
Hey, this is great. So I'm just a few hours up the road from you. So if I'm looking for any pretext to come down and hang out with you some afternoon at some point and see if we can, really make some headway. That'd be fun. But also,
so we can shoot you though our presentation if you want to look at it first. Yeah, and then we can figure things out. Kind of going from there.
Hunter, you had a thought.
Yeah, well, I literally had a thought and then found that you'd already written my sentence. Like, what they're very much talking about is creating a prototype of a curriculum, right? Yeah. That then people can then innovate off of, which is, I think, also going to end up, teaching students and teachers how innovation really works.
Well, and why this thing that we're trying to pull together called personal innovation is something that everyone needs to be taught, and it's time to decloister as much as it would serve my consultancy to to make us look like masters of the dark arts. That's kind of bullshit, and we'd really much rather get the full toolkit and approach and everything out to everyone, and that's what the big win is.
Yeah. And what I love to, what I am for, and what I wish for this next chat is to combine the monomyth curriculum, personal innovation, all the metacognition in the Straight A Conspiracy, and superheroes from Brian Edward Hill.
That is some idea sex right there.
Yeah.
That's man. I just need to be in that session. That's amazing. Hey, folks, thank you all so much. This was fantastic. I'm excited. It just does my heart so much good to know that such brilliance and care and love and concern is happening out there. And so let's create something really wonderful here.
Awesome.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Thanks so much, guys.
You guys.
I thank you.
Bye.
Peace.